I'm just going to be transparent. There's been many times in my business career where I knew what I should be doing, but I would not do it. I would get these periods of intense motivation and drive, and then periods of confusion and procrastination. And in 2021, I almost lost my entire business. I was bleeding money month after month because I was avoiding doing the work. And I didn't know why. It seemed like I was just trapped to this some sort of dark force that would hold me down. So recently, I was invited to speak to a group of business owners to share about my experience, my discoveries, and what I've been implementing since then to completely turn my life around. And if you found yourself and you're resonating with this is resonating where you have found yourself in these spots where you have a business, you have this project you want to work on, that you're trying to get to another level and you know what you need to do, but you just don't do it. And by the end of this presentation that you're about to watch, you will know exactly why it happens and how to prevent it. So I hope you enjoy this presentation.
If you have a pen and paper, I highly encourage you to take that out. And I'm going to be asking throughout this presentation, I would love for you to reflect. And the goal here is to leave some time near the end where maybe we can have a conversation where I can answer some questions. So if at any point, Jordan, if I lag out or something, please just jump in, let me know.
Sure.
And we can take a couple of steps back. So why you can't do the work. Last time we talked about the foundations of mindset. And I really believe that there was a couple of principles, at least, that I highlighted that, if followed, can make your life just a little bit more enjoyable. It at least did for me. And this was kind of a summary of some of those principles that I was able to cover when I came out. People always do what's in their best interest, even yourself. You're 100% control of your life. You don't have business problems. It's personal. Self-development is the search for blind spots and tools. Breathe. What am I making this mean? So that was a summary of what we chatted about last time. But there was a huge assumption that I made. And this is what I want to talk about today. Goal setting, integrity, and mindset all fail if one element is missing. And so with StudentWorks, you get all the business tactics. You know, we had somebody share that they're starting their third crew. So you know how to organize them, how you hire. Those are all the business tactics. Now, before that, obviously, if you want to start a third crew, you need to have that as a goal. So you have to set really smart goals and make sure that that's being aligned. Then there is integrity, you know, making sure that we are clear that if you set out this goal, you're going to go hit it. And then a layer deeper on that is you got to make sure your mindset is where it needs to be as well. But what is that last thing that sometimes it feels like you have the mindset, you do what you say you're going to do, you have good goals, you know the tactics, but still don't do the work. I know for me, that happened quite a bit where I have all these things, but like I still wouldn't go door to door. I still wouldn't make that phone call. And so, one second, we're just gonna. So this was something I reflected on quite a lot. And everything you heard related to mindset, strategy, business tactics, all that stuff is very important, and success is nearly impossible without them. But this is a question that I've always been interested in. Why do some people exceed their goals while others struggle to get even close? Is it entropy, lack of integrity, weak goal setting, bad mindset? Maybe. Before we try to diagnose the issue through those examples, let's try to find the root of this. And I found something interesting. So here's a photo of one of the presentations I gave in Calgary. Here's a photo in Vancouver. And if you look closely here and here, you'll find that Vancouver has barbers that can actually, just better barbers that can give fades. So that's one observation I made. Second observation, seriously, when I remember asking everybody what's working, what's not working, remember that exercise? I asked you to look at areas of your life that are not working or not working as well as you like them to. I found a pattern, a theme. there was a theme where lack of discipline would show up. Oh, I know I would do this. Oh, I wouldn't do this, or I would do that, or I want to take a cold shower. I want to go more door to door. That was a theme that came up often. And so these questions were the specific questions that I know I had some of you reflect on. So why do we have goals, make progress towards them, and then smash it all down? Why are we in this dance between who we are and who we want to become? Why can't we just achieve what we want to achieve? What is the cure to this? And I argue that the answer to all these questions has really been hidden in plain sight. And this is going to be, I think, one of the elements that I want you to understand about managing yourself. So you have all these things. Would be the final of the puzzle. And its simplicity can actually be distracting, belittling, even hindering, just how simple it can be. And this is the disclaimer I'm giving, is you may walk away from here being like, oh, I kind of knew that. That is a downside of what I'm going to share with you, but it is so important. So I'm going to show you how, despite having what I would think really good integrity, really good, I wouldn't say best, but really good integrity, really good mindset while running my contracting business, my lack of understanding with this one thing made me fall into a pretty deep, like sad moment in my life when I was trying to build my other business, tradearc, and my blindness to this one thing started to grow. In fact, till this day, when I was creating this presentation, I realized, wow, it kind of crept back in. It's kind of like that pebble in your shoe. And it's not the mountains that wear you out. It really is the pebble in your shoe. And my integrity and mindset would slip when I wouldn't take care of this. And, I really do think there's this obsession to understand what's out there in space, but we usually forget what's in our own body. And we have been lost trying to figure out our mind when we haven't even mastered our brain. Ladies and gentlemen, here's the realization I made. I had good mindset, but my brain was fucked. And unless I fixed it first, I had no chance to truly master any successful mindset, ideology, or habit. And I want to make this clear that my brain, your brain, like my brain is not my mindset. I think they're two different things. And when I talk about the brain, I'm talking about the actual physical and chemical side of your brain, not your conscious and subconscious. So working on my mindset before working on my brain is kind of like mentally training for a marathon, even though you might be injured with like a broken leg. So you might be wondering, okay, Amber, the brain is very complicated. What about it are you talking about specifically? Great question. Let me introduce you to the most important part of your brain that's in your brain that will play to your success or failure this year. Right now, we're entering May. This is when seasonality and production just explodes. And everything you've been building towards and planning since last September, all the effort you've done marketing, right now, April, May, this is where it really gets very important how you show up. And what if I told you that there's one part of your brain that is responsible for most of your reward, motivation, stress, and even behavioral adaptation? The reason I say behavioral adaptation is maybe you're on this call, you have some habits that you don't really like, but you don't know what to do about it. That same part of your brain that is responsible for behavior and habits is also responsible for your reward, motivation, and stress. And it's called the VTA, the ventral tegmental area. And it's responsible for most of your reward, motivation, and stress. And it's driven by one main chemical, dopamine. And honestly, if you took a scan of my brain when I was like where my brain was just not set up properly, it probably would look something like this. But my goal at the end of this presentation is to show you exactly how you can go from here to there, and get back to like a healthy habit. So this helped me the most in 2021 than anything else I tried to do. So here's what happened. 2021, I moved out and I went super minimalistic. I thought, remove all distractions. There's going to be my laptop, my phone, nothing else. It's just going to be a desk and a bed. This is a photo of my apartment at that time. Literally, I would sleep there. I would work there. I thought I would focus more. But what happened was actually the opposite. Because there was so little to focus on, the negative things that were fueled by dopamine got way more focused than before. And so what I did was I went back on some of the data. I have like an app that shows me my phone usage. I listened to some old podcasts and I found something. I made a chart. Here's roughly where my time went when I was in school running my business. A lot of lectures. Then there's my business, fraternity. Don't ask me about that. Studying, Toastmasters, like I'd practice public speaking, working out, social media, video games, hanging out with friends. I mean, that's what it looked like. Then when I moved out, you would think I would become more productive. Here's what actually happened. Yes, I spent more time on my business, but the moment you took out fraternity studying, landmark, like self-development, in-person lectures, social media and video games filled up all the rest of the space. I thought I'd be working out 5 times a day. Just like there's be so much time, I could do so many things. Not what happened. Logically, I knew that doing things like canvassing, doing estimates, cold calling, writing production planners, and hiring would bring me more benefits in the long run, but my time was not spent there. Instead, I chose to play video games, scroll through IG, eat unhealthily, go through random hookups, send snaps, watch YouTube, and binge Netflix. Interesting. I thought I would watch more CEO interviews, read more books, work out more, and take more action. Not what happened. I used to believe that the less things I had commitments to, the better. But what actually was my brain and my habits, my brain was too crippled to be able to take on a fewer things because of my habits. And instead of working on my business and doing the boring things, I consumed TikTok. And then all of a sudden, it became like an obsession of mine to go viral on TikTok. Meanwhile, these are real numbers from my business between July and November of 2021. We were losing money, and that's because I wasn't doing what I knew to do. And it was until I figured this stuff out that the business was saved and we had a massive month in December. So how does this happen? Some of the most successful people that I look up to, Marcus Aurelius, Michael Jordan, you have Brian Scudamore, 1-800 Got Junk. I really do think wrangled down the most important chemical related to your reward stimuli, and that's dopamine. And most people think dopamine is related to pleasure. Oh, if you feel good, that's dopamine. Not true. That's a misconception. It's actually related to your desires. Okay, so dopamine isn't when you're watching a YouTube video and you're getting that satisfaction. That's not dopamine. It's actually the desire to go on your phone, the desire to click on that thumbnail, the desire to pick up your phone. That is dopamine. How powerful is dopamine? Let's look at an experiment. Okay. So scientists wanted to experiment with what the effect of dopamine would look like. So they got, a rat experiment, and they had one of the rats hooked up to a dopamine machine, where if it pulled this lever or it pushed a button, its brain would get zapped with just like dopamine. It would feel like, okay, I got rewarded for it. So then the rat would want to click the button, it'd get like a good feeling, and then it would want to keep clicking the button, and then it would create a cycle until the rat would just collapse from exhaustion and fatigue. And then they tried to do the opposite. What if they took out dopamine from a rat? What would happen? Well, all desire just disappeared. And the rat didn't even want to go grab food. It didn't even want to grab water, do anything. And it was unless the scientists literally took the food and put it in the rat's mouth, it wouldn't do anything. So they said, okay, too much dopamine doesn't work. No dopamine doesn't work. What if we found a middle ground? So they set up the cage to have two paths. One path you see here in the orange to grab food and water. The rat would have to undergo some sort of pain. So it would have to walk on like a pad that would shock it a little, and then it would get its food and water. And then it had another path where if it walked through it and it got shocked, it can click or pull the dopamine lever. what they found was that the rats would rather go through pain to get the dopamine than go and grab food. And if you try to remove, by the way, and it's kind of a given, if you remove the pad of pain to the dopamine button, the rat would stop eating and drinking water and it would actually just die clicking the button because it wouldn't even want to undergo any pain to get to grab the food and water. And that's because of a specific reason. Let's imagine for a second there's like a reward that you can get from one activity versus the next. So let's say there's two activities. One gives you, 1 unit of dopamine, and another gives you 3 units of dopamine. Let's say that first unit is a book. If you've read any books recently, you might realize, hey, there's like sometimes 20 pages you have to go through until you find something that like just you'd be like, oh my God, I never thought about it. If it's a good book, maybe like 10 pages, you just like your brain goes, wow, that was really good. Versus like a YouTube video with like a celebrity, expensive watches and cars. And it's just like your brain stands no chance. That's because your brain has no context. That part of your brain doesn't know that that book is going to pay off in the long term and help you become smarter and avoid mistakes and become a better dad one day because, you're more aligned and more clear. It doesn't know that. It just knows YouTube equals pleasure. It's easy. There's no pain. Do more of that. Do more of that. You're going to pick this most of the time. And the same applies and here's other things that can really screw up with your mind. Alcohol, porn, gambling, just anything on your phone, really, notifications, crypto, and hard drugs. But hammer, some content on social media and YouTube is educational. Okay. Let's run an experiment. Okay. Here's an interesting anecdote. I'm going to show you a clip. That's the anecdote of phone usage and the effects of crypto in general. And what I want you to observe is, yes, there's some wisdom in here. Okay, we're going to walk away learning something, but I'm going to give a language warning. They swear, but there is some value here. So let's look at this clip to support that phone usage. Specifically, I want to hit on that crypto point. If any of you guys own any crypto or something like that, or thinking about it, even in the stock market, just consider this anecdote here. So we'll go through this. It's a 10, 15-second clip. I want to make sure I'm sharing screen audio. We are. Okay, here we go.
Company in the US, and he accepts a lot of crypto as a form of payment. So he basically would dollar cost average into crypto just by nature of his business model. So over the years, he's accumulated like a fair bit of it to a point that it's like a giant fucking chunk of his net worth. And I just watch him, like I just visited him in Boise, Idaho before I came here. And every night he's like refreshing the thing, and it's so volatile.
Oh, dude,
you
yeah.
could either be in like an amazing mood, and then like the next day you're like, fuck, I just lost like 25% of my net worth.
No,
like,
it's fucking crazy.
And like trying to like deal with that, I feel like mentally and stress wise even is like, even though on paper you're, this is great money wise and it looks awesome on your portfolio for it to like jump this much, the amount of stress you endure and like what kind of impact does that have on your like state of mind and even ability to focus on like new business endeavors and do fucking anything, enjoy your relationships, enjoy time off where you're like not refreshing your fucking thing,
Dude, I know 1,000,000% what you're saying, because when I had a lot of that money in the fucking Bitcoin, it was worth, crazy. I would literally like wake up and like, I would wake up to piss and I would like have to stop myself from checking, but I couldn't. I'd still check, and it's like I'd lose $2 million, or like, it's like,
yeah, while you're taking a shit, you lose $2 million.
Piss. It's like,
So it's funny. It's crude. I understand. But what's interesting is that was the content I used to consume. And there is some value in some of these things. But look how much swifting you have to do and sifting you have to do. So you compare to this clip. Now, the context for this clip is there's this, again, and this is if you're interested in the business world, you like running a business, you want to become smart at running a business, or maybe one day you want to become an investor, you want to buy businesses. It doesn't get more potent than studying like a specific person like Warren Buffett. So the context for this is he's talking about Solomon Brothers, who it's like an amazing company that underwent a bunch of challenges. So he uses this little short clip, okay? And notice how much less entertaining this can be.
The test will be, A, whether they control that business in a way that that leverage does not prove dangerous, and secondly, what kind of returns on equity they earn.
Okay. So to like appreciate this, think of all the work you'd have to do to appreciate this clip. You have to know about Solomon Brothers. You have to read about them. You have to understand what leverage he's talking about. What the heck is return on equity to get the principle he's trying to explain. And so no wonder it was way easier, way more consumable. By the way, that was in the middle of a 3-hour segment, way more consumable. And so what was interesting was I started, because of the ease of access and the entertainment value of the thing on the left, I would consume more of that, rewiring my brain, versus consuming the thing on the right. Interesting. So I started rewiring my brain to maximize those dopamine hits. And what would happen is, if, let's say I had a chart here of the different levels of tolerance to dopamine, I would start normally at like 1, maybe then I would need 2 units of dopamine, then 3, then 4, then 5. And before you knew it, before I knew it, if my tolerance kept increasing, and I would have priced myself out, so to say, out of low dopamine activities. Right now, my brain was so used to high dopamine things like TikTok, playing video games. I mean, it was crazy. I remember this one time I had fast food, watched TikTok for like 30 minutes, played a game of Call of Duty, and then jumped on a sales call. Like, what do you think was going to happen on that call? Nothing productive. I was bored. And you can't blame me either. I just finished zapping my brain with like pleasure in like 50 different ways, that if you asked me to cold call after that sales call or create a spreadsheet or read a book, I would stand no chance. And so these crucial activities were just getting crushed by my increased need of dopamine. I literally had no desire or motivation to do anything productive, because somehow the things that are productive are just not the most exciting. And that's the fuel, the desire, the motivation. You know, that desire to pick up your phone and check it? Yeah, where's that desire to go door to door? It's there. It's just being snuffed out. And so what we have to do is try to reverse it. But before that, I want you to be able to diagnose yourself. Okay, so here's a little exercise. I tried roughly ranking some of these things based on how much I think it would affect your dopamine levels. So we'll start with like music, Spotify, something like that, something easy, nobody would fault you for. Then you get to Netflix, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, fast food, beer, porn, TikTok, video games. And then this is the crazy stuff like gambling, hard drugs, crypto, vaping every single second. And then even stuff like OnlyFans, basically more extreme versions of porn. Let's take a look. And this can be confronting. You don't have to share your results with anybody, but let's try something here, okay? Take out a calculator between you and yourself, and then add up your points. Okay, so let's say hypothetically you are on Spotify, Instagram, and Netflix, and you consume that stuff. Okay, then Netflix is 2 points, Instagram is 2 points, Spotify is 1 point. So 2 plus 2 plus 1 is 5. Okay, so try play along. For example, Snapchat would be 3 points. If you also do YouTube, that's YouTube plus Snapchat, that's 6 points. So that's how that would work. The maximum amount of points you can get is like 55. So take a second. I'm going to do this here with you as well. And let's give this a shot. So take a second and add up the things that are in your habits here. Cool. Give everybody some time. Okay. Anybody need more time? Looking at the screen. No? Everybody good? Cool. All right. So got your score? Take that number and divide it by 55. Okay. So take that number, divide it by 55. Then multiply it by 100 so that we can get a percentage. Okay. So if you scored 100% on this, I'm glad you're here and watching. Let's see what we could do. So I don't know what to call this percentage. This is obviously just something I made up, but I know for me personally, the higher the number, then the higher the probability of failure for me to focus on one task for an hour. Like that was just like a fact for me. Like if I was just, I know when I first did this, my score was like around like 28 or something like that. So the odds of me sitting down and doing a production planner late in the day, forget about it. That production planner would never get done. And I really believe that the opposite of focus is distraction, and that distraction is influenced by dopamine. Because again, think of yourself like you wake up and let's say you had no obligations, whatever. What desire comes out like from the abyss? Like you wake up and then there's a desire. For me, it's to check my email. There's just that desire because there's like a reward in there. Sometimes, there's paid invoice receipts in there or whatever, or like maybe I'm just scared of like chaos. But that is that distraction, what you focus on, where your attention goes, that desire to do something is all influenced by dopamine. So there are two ways that I think most people think about what you can do or you can focus on. You can just desire to do it, or you can will yourself to do it. And here's the difference. We all have had an essay that's due at midnight. And you know that it's coming like 5 days. And then at least for me, I got to like really will myself, drag myself to the library, block something out on my calendar and really will my power. And then I wouldn't do it. I'd delay it. And then the day comes. And I know it's going to take me 5 hours to write this thing. And there's 6 hours left. Now I have a desire to do it. And what do you think happens? It gets done. And so the desire, the fear of failing and needing to repeat like that class would be so strong, it would snuff out my desire to check Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, and all this BS. My willpower it just wouldn't serve me here. And one of the most common thing I struggled with was during this time in my life was this lack of discipline, lack of feeling of fulfillment, because I would delay things and do things that I just wouldn't feel good about. I wouldn't be where I want to be. I wouldn't be in the shape I want to be. My business wouldn't be where I want it to be. And so this is like a visualization of like my mood most of the time. No matter how much I tried to get sleep, I either wouldn't get the sleep or I'd sleep so much that I was constantly feeling tired. And then, you hear some of these things about obesity rising, people using social media, more and more people spending time on social media, anxiety, how it follows the same trend. And that's, at least for me personally, 9 times out of 10, I know what I should be doing. I just know what I need to do. I have all the right support, that right guidance. I know I got to go door to door. I just wouldn't do it. And instead, I would delay or come up with some fancy excuse. And man, did I get creative. Oh, Amber, why'd you didn't go door to door? Well, I got to clean my car. Oh, it needs an oil change. I would find these creative, productive ways to be lazy. Oh, I got to clean up the storage on my laptop. It's running low. Oh, I got to like organize my next week. One of my favorite things I would do is organize my day and my week and become more and more efficient and productive. But then I just wouldn't I would set myself up so I have the most productive schedule. And the only thing that would be missing is me doing the work. And then I just wouldn't do it. Door to door, forget about it. Going on runs and starting to do that, because, you know, I saw David Goggins do it. I'm like, yeah, that looks cool. Let's do that. And then the day comes, you got to put on your shoes and you're like, oh man, like I should probably go door to door. Cold showers, you know, that was a question that I got. It's like, hey, you know, I want to wake up early in the morning, do a cold shower. But yeah, you're probably snoozing, brother, just like I did, because it's so painful whereas like I just would follow what feels a little bit better, which is, oh, I should probably catch up on my sleep. Consuming 1994 annual meeting and then actually understanding what the heck they're talking about. Forget about that. I'm just going to watch a video essay about the lines at Disney. Cold calling, following up with people. I'll just do that closer to the day or when my DM tells me to. Having awkward, honest conversations with people you love in your life. It's probably fine. It ain't that deep. Going to the gym. I'm running a business and full-time in school. I don't have time for that. That was for me. That was my experience. I recognize I am the rat. I was the rat in the experiment. Any sort of pain I would experience, I would just rather take out my dopamine button and I just click it and spam it in the most creative ways. I'm hitting the button. I'm choosing to avoid pain. And so, you know, I talked about desire and willpower. It's either like a pull. You know, you just meet some people in your life and it feels like they're just being pulled by like something. They're just taking action. They're like ridiculous in the things they can get off their to-do list. And then for me, I would think, oh, they must be driven by a really strong why. And they probably have a 50-page manifesto on like why they should be living. It's like, no, they're probably not consuming. If you check my phone usage in 2019, I mean, I had like 55 hours of screen time per week. It was something ridiculous. And so what we got to do there is flip it on its head. And here's what I would say is there is some correlation with this. We're, you know, this is me having fun with it a little bit, but just from what I've observed, either the clients I work with at contracting.com or some of my friends that I've seen or people that interact with me on the podcast or whatever, I've noticed there's like levels of profit. And you might say, Amber, I'm not chasing money. I don't care about profit. Fair enough. I'm not talking about like dividends or profit in your pocket. I'm just saying the profitability of business. I think we can all agree if you're running a business, having it be more profitable is for the best. Even if you want to be charitable, not pocket any of it, you can pay your people more. I think it's a good place to look at. And it's kind of like a fun way I look at it, different levels in compared to the profit. And these are all levels I went through. There's the dopamine fiend. Okay. That's like 0 to 40K. The distracted, that's when you get 40 to 80. The one more, the late night binger, you know, maybe you're like a stoic and you get things done from the morning to the evening, but then 7 p.m. hits and you're just chowing down on like the greasiest burger, a pint of ice cream, and watching 3 hours of YouTube. And the focused, and then the last level would be the monk, you know. There's some people we know that in our life who just are just dialed in. And this is the level that I'm trying to achieve that I sometimes rub up against, but fail. Because this game, it's sneaky. And so this would be the levels, the amount that you would need, the amount of dopamine you would need to actually work just changes. You know, a book might be the only thing that that person at the highest level needs, a good conversation, a book and a good conversation, and then just time with themselves with a pen and paper. And that's all they need. So how do we start taking control? Okay. And you got to do it by rewiring your brain to love the slow drip versus the instant flood. And the slow drip is taking notes, doing some critical thinking, zooming out, having an honest conversation with people in your lives, reading a book, creating a spreadsheet. That's the slow drip stuff that you're constantly, at least for me, snuffing out with like vape, TikTok, fast food. I mean, forget about it. So how do you change this? You do something called a dopamine detox. Okay. And what that would do is it can slowly bring you back down to earth. Okay. Out of the clouds of all the ads and videos and reels and shorts. For me, this was one of the hardest things I did in that year. And this might be one of the hardest things you will do this year. Don't worry, it's optional. You're not forced to do this. But if this stuff is resonating, if you felt the same amount of angst or maybe a little bit of upset with yourself because you're not achieving the things you want to achieve, and you know that your phone usage, social media usage, or some of the other things that are a bit more taboo that maybe secretly you're doing that you don't think affects your business, this is an opportunity for you. And at least for me, the withdrawals were so powerful that I actually became unproductive for a day or two. But that's the price. So I'm going to show you this. I'm going to make sure everybody gets access to this. So I made this resource, cleaned it up for you. This is the dopamine detox checklist, and there's two modes. There's a hard mode and normal mode. And the big thing with hard mode is no electronics for like one of the day one. It's kind of like the Sabbath. You can't do anything related to technology in the first one. Normal mode is just a simpler version of that. So I'll go quickly through normal mode. We'll start there. Okay, if you're using the bathroom, don't use your phone. No music or podcast. Eat food in silence. Delete all your social media apps. No vaping, no smoking, no alcohol, no gambling, no video games, no fighting or wrestling. I don't know why that was in there. That was pretty fun. Work out with no music. No magazines, no sugar, no food, no masturbating, no shopping, no porn, nothing like that. There's a lot of things you can do. Just don't do these things. Versus hard mode, you wake up, Wi-Fi data notifications turned off, you unplug the router, you take all your electronics, you throw them in a cupboard, and that first day you do the exact same thing, but you're just kind of in your house for that first day. And then obviously, now I do understand we're all running businesses. We have estimates. We have all these things. So this is where I would recommend, like, if you really can't take like a full day to just yourself, where you can just you with a book and a pen and paper for just that entire day, then I would suggest maybe normal mode. It's just 3 days for both. And you can explore those options. I have here things that you can do throughout the day. So I have here an example of a sugar-free diet, examples of a breakfast, lunch, and dinner, with more examples if you have different nutrition like requirements, things you can do during the detox. I have a book link here. I have Sam Harris. He has an amazing meditation app. Walks, working out, canvassing, meditating, reading, working, training your client, training your employees, just focusing on work. But here's the thing, the more bored you are, the more sore I think your dopamine transmitters are from recovering. This is something I made up. But like if you go to the gym and your muscles are sore, it's because you've been overexerting them. If you found yourself getting so bored, at least for me, I was so bored. I wanted like to shoot myself. It was ridiculous. It was a level of boredom that was painful. That was like proof of just how zapped up I really was. And this is what I tried to explore, is what level of dopamine have I trained my brain to get comfortable at? Here's the thing. Here's the realization I made, that at the end of the day, these giant companies don't want you to stop clicking the button. Every single one of them profits from you partaking in these things. And at the end of the day, you're sacrificing the long term for some short-term gain. They just kind of want you in rat mode. And at the end of the day, you're either playing your own game or somebody else's. And this is the greatest war of our generation, I believe. It's the war on attention. And the only way to fight it is by just actually regulating it a little bit. Okay, taking a couple of steps back, man. And this is what got me to get started. I did hard mode. And I did 3 days just in my room. I had enough food, and I was like very disappointed with where I was at that point in my life. I was very upset at myself. And I learned about this, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go 3 days hard mode, no electronics. I told everybody, I set expectations with everybody. It was so powerful. I remember like the second day I would wake up and I would just look outside my window. I'd be like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. Like, the sun is like in my face, like how amazing. It was crazy. And there was one book I was reading that made me literally cry. I've never cried reading a book, but it's like I blasted through like 3 books in 3 days. It was crazy. There's nothing else to do. And I really came out of it with a lot of clarity and a lot of focus. And so that would be it. That is the end there, the focus. And consider maybe you don't need a 50-page manifesto and a 10 out of 10 clear why to get the energy to run your business. Consider maybe you don't need to listen to David Goggins and motivational videos every day while guzzling down 3 cups of coffee to attack the day. That maybe it's not about adding things, but removing. So what are you willing to sacrifice to get what you want? One of my favorite clips from Sam Harris talking about boredom, his relationship to boredom, that piggybacks, I think, perfectly to this presentation. Would you guys be open to listening to maybe another perspective from somebody else? I can't summarize his words because it's just put so beautifully, and he shares his own story with boredom and his mind and dealing with the chaos of his mind. Would you guys be interested in that? Yes. Okay. Okay, cool. Let's take a second. Let's listen to Sam Harris, and then we can wrap from here.
I'm going to talk today about the problem of boredom. Now, it's true, we encounter boredom less and less, with all of our gadgets and with the totality of human knowledge and artistic output always available to us. When you can always hear your favorite song, or watch a great film, or read a great book, or text a friend, because you can do all of these things with a device that you have at your side 24 hours a day, you might successfully avoid boredom for the rest of your life. But you might also never discover what's on the other side of boredom. And you might not recognize the price you are paying for being compelled to distract yourself, for having lost or having simply never acquired a capacity for doing nothing, a productive capacity for doing nothing. Once you learn to meditate, you realize that boredom is simply a failure to pay attention. If something as simple and repetitive as breathing can become a source of blissful contemplation, and it can, and if the feeling of boredom itself can become an object of intense interest, and it can, there's no way to be bored if you're paying close attention to your experience. So training in meditation is the true cure for boredom. It's a kind of permanent inoculation. Once you learn how to meditate, you will never be truly bored again. Now, this isn't to say that you won't still make choices in life. Certain activities might still feel like a waste of time, and they might be a waste of time given all the other things you could do. So you might still walk out of a movie or stop reading a book because it's, quote, boring. But when left alone with yourself, how do you feel? Are you desperate to be distracted by some stimulus? Or can you find a deep feeling of well-being as an intrinsic property of just being conscious? The gulf between these two conditions is enormous. And in my experience, only meditation allows us to reliably span it. In the beginning of my book, Waking Up, I described my most memorable experience of suffering the costs of not knowing how to meditate. I'll read you that first page, because it's relevant here. I once participated in a 23-day wilderness program in the mountains of Colorado. If the purpose of this course was to expose students to dangerous lightning and half the world's mosquitoes, it was fulfilled on the first day. What was, in essence, a forced march through hundreds of miles of backcountry culminated in a ritual known as the Solo, where we were finally permitted to rest, alone on the outskirts of a gorgeous alpine lake, for 3 days of fasting and contemplation. I had just turned 16, and this was my first taste of true solitude since exiting my mother's womb. It proved a sufficient provocation. After a long nap and a glance at the icy waters of the lake, the promising young man I imagined myself to be was quickly cut down by loneliness and boredom. I filled the pages of my journal not with the insights of a budding naturalist, philosopher, or mystic, but with a list of the foods on which I intended to gorge myself the instant I returned to civilization. Judging from the state of my consciousness at the time, millions of years of hominid evolution had produced nothing more transcendent than a craving for a cheeseburger and a chocolate milkshake. I found the experience of sitting undisturbed for 3 days amid pristine breezes and starlight, with nothing to do but contemplate the mystery of my existence, to be a source of perfect misery, for which I could see not so much a glimmer of my own contribution. My letters home, in their plaintiveness and self-pity, rivaled any written at Shiloh or Gallipoli. So I was more than a little surprised when several members of our party, most of whom were a decade older than I, described their days and nights of solitude in positive, even transformational terms. I simply didn't know what to make of their claims to happiness. How could someone's happiness increase when all the material sources of pleasure and distraction had been removed? At that age, the nature of my own mind did not interest me. Only my life did, and I was utterly oblivious to how different life would be if the quality of my mind were to change. Okay, so that's how the book starts, and that is really, although I didn't know it at the time, how my interest in esoteric things like meditation started. I mean, that was a very clear reference point for me for the consequences of having an untrained mind and of seeing no alternative but to be continuously lost in thought. Throughout this course, I'm going to talk about many of the insights that can come as one learns to meditate. Insights about the nature of consciousness and the self, and the ways in which a growing understanding of the mind connects to ethics. But I think the deepest reason to learn this practice is to deepen one's wisdom and well-being. And that really comes down to not suffering unnecessarily. It comes down to the simple ability to be able to recognize one's thoughts, as appearances in consciousness, and to no longer be their mere captive. But we'll talk more about that later on.
Yeah. So this is easily one of my favorite segments and the sections that he talked about. And ultimately, the more you meditate, all he's talking about is your ability to direct your focus. And the point of it is that when this moment comes, there will be moments where you know you should go door knocking versus going door to door or creating that production planner. The moment you can be aware that there is actually a choice, you can make a choice. Now you might say, well, Amber, isn't that willpower? Yes, in the moment. But if you can be aware of what's happening to your mind, that at this moment, I'm choosing to procrastinate on this task so I can watch YouTube, the solution isn't just, I'm not going to watch YouTube. It's like, well, maybe I should just try to remove YouTube from my environment for now. And then try to get clarity on why the heck am I even gonna go door to door in the first place. It can allow you to start discovering some truths about what you want to accomplish and why. A better understanding of yourself, your goals, your business, and the impact you want to have on the world. And so I hope this is of value. I hope this was worth your time. And for those of you that stuck around, I appreciate you. If you are in, I will see you in the WhatsApp group. And if not, thank you for your time. I appreciate you.